If scientists could extend your life an extra 10 years, would you take advantage of it? Well, you might not if you feel like your body's already trashed and it's only going to get worse. I mean, nobody really wants to live hooked up to a machine for an extra 10 or 12 years just waiting to die. But science is making new discoveries that might not only make it possible to slow down aging, but maybe even reverse aging and help you live a longer, healthier, and even more active life. Let's take a look at what's new. We're going to talk about developments in science and technology that are either available now or soon going to be available that will help you either slow down or maybe even reverse aging. Make sure you stay to the end to get all this information. It's good stuff. If you're old enough to have attended your 20, 30, 40-year high school reunion, you probably looked around there and you saw some people who hadn't changed very much, and then maybe you saw some other folks who you couldn't even recognize because they had aged so much. Maybe the first thing we need to do is try and understand what exactly is aging. If you go to your doctor and you tell him you've got a bunch of new aches and pains, and he just says, well, it's just a function of aging, what's he talking about? Harvard professor and geneticist David Sinclair does a pretty good job of explaining it.
But here's the analogy, that the DNA is the digital information on a compact disc. Those of us who are old enough know what that is. For the youngsters, this is what we used to store 20 songs on. It was great technology. That's your genome, the digital information. The epigenome is the reader, and it can read different songs depending on different parts of the body and different cell types. But what I believe is causing aging is the skipping of those songs, skipping of the reader. And what makes songs skip? Scratches. So aging is essentially scratches on a compact disc that makes the music skip. And eventually cells, by reading the wrong genes, skipping the wrong genes, lose their ability to fight against disease. They lose their function. We get dementia, we get heart disease, we get cancer, we get frailty.
There's a paper available on the National Institute of Health website titled The 9 Hallmarks of Aging. That paper identifies what's actually happening at a molecular and cellular level that we end up seeing and feeling as aging. So let's talk first about one of those things, the epigenetics. Basically, all your cells have the same DNA. What makes your cells different, what makes a liver cell different from a heart cell or a brain cell, is the epigenome. Epigenetics is the information system for the cells. It tells the DNA how to behave. It gives it its marching orders. One of the things that epigenetics looks at is DNA methylation. Now, DNA methylation changes with age. By measuring it, we can tell how old you really are regardless of the years on the calendar. The rate of DNA methylation has been called the epigenetic clock. It can tell us your biological age based on gains or losses in methylation at specific regions throughout the genome. Now let's listen to Professor Sinclair discuss the importance of that subject.
By reading the changes over time of these DNA methylation marks on the DNA that are attached to the letter C in the DNA, not the A, T, or G, you can estimate somebody's biological age because it's reproducible. We're all aging due to the same mechanisms, and that there's a pattern that occurs from conception very rapidly until we're born, and then slows down, and then is linear throughout our lifespan. We can measure that clock. I can take your blood, I can take your skin, any part of your body, and I can run that through what's called a DNA sequencer, measure the methylation, there's thousands of them, and putting that into a machine learning derived algorithm, I can tell you your actual real age, not your chronological age. I mean, birthdays, who cares? Number of times the Earth's gone around the sun, are you kidding me? That's not your real age. What your real age is there's changes to the epigenome that determine how old you really are. This is a mouse that's the control in my lab. So we've tweaked this mouse in every other way except scratch its CD. At the same time, we took a sibling born at the same time, and we, for 3 weeks, accelerated the scratches on the CD. We disrupted its epigenome, and the cells started to lose their identity. But what happened 10 months later was we got an old mouse. This isn't just a mouse that looks old. This mouse is literally 50% older than its sibling, even though it's genetically identical. These are twins born at the same time. One is old and one is not. We can drive aging as fast as we want forwards. Then the question is, if you can give something, can you take it away? And if I'm right, the answer is yes.
So studying epigenetics has given us some pretty interesting tools that can help us turn back the clock, not the least of which is that supplement NMN. I'll put a link in the description to where you can get that. But that was a pretty interesting supplement that can help change your biological age. There's also lifestyle factors that can help change your biological age that are part of the epigenetics study. Before I go on further, I want to talk about some of the other advances, not in quite as much detail as this, but let's talk about them anyway. Cellular reprogramming and Yamanaka factors. So, it turns out we've figured out that we can actually reprogram cells thanks to a Japanese scientist whose last name was Yamanaka. We've determined that a combination of specific genes can reprogram a cell back from an adult cell back to a youthful cell. And right now, scientists are working on ways that they can use those cells for tissue repair or transplanting them back into and helping change the health of the whole human body. Another one is senolytics. There's some cells in your body that lose their function, but they remain biologically active. So they're just kind of taking up space, and they can cause diseases and inflammation. Senolytic drugs are designed to specifically target those cells and eliminate them, and there's pretty promising research that shows that by doing that, we do help increase the lifespan and health span of the individuals getting those drugs. Now I want to introduce Dr. Mark Hyman, another guy whose specialty is longevity, and let's hear some of his thoughts on some of the other things that are interesting in science today.
So we have to understand our chronological age. I'm 62, I'm going to be 63 next week. Doesn't really matter. It's our biological age that matters. And I've seen people who were 40 who had a biological age of 70, and I've seen people who are 70 who have a biological age of 40. That's what's possible if we understand how to work with this. So how do we reverse our biological age clock? What do we have to do? Well, this is a patient I had at Cleveland Clinic. Her name was Janice. She had so many problems, right? She had heart disease, heart failure, angina, diabetes on insulin. She had high blood pressure. Her kidneys were failing. Her liver was failing. She had fatty liver. And she was on a pile of medications. Her copay was $20,000 a year. And she had this whole list of problems. Janice was on her way out. She was headed for a heart transplant and a kidney transplant. And we used this powerful new drug that has the power to transform and improve the expression of tens of thousands of genes, to optimize tens of thousands of protein networks, to balance and optimize your hormone regulation, to improve your brain chemistry, to optimize your microbiome, and it works faster, better, and cheaper than any drug on the planet, and it's available to almost anybody. You know what it is? What you put at the end of your fork is more important than anything you'll find in a prescription bottle. Within 3 days of changing your diet, all right, we did it at Cleveland Clinic on our Functioning for Life program, and it's based on a anti-inflammatory, detoxifying, microbiome supporting diet, which I basically use at my patients part of functional medicine. I call it the 10-day detox diet, but essentially it's basically whole foods, anti-inflammatory, lots of good fats, low glycemic, a lot of phytonutrients. Within 3 days, she was off insulin. Within 3 months, using food as medicine, we were able to transform all her diseases. And food is like code. You can rewrite your biological software by what you're eating. If you understood that with every bite of food you take, you're literally transforming everything in your body in real time, you would think twice about what you're eating. Nobody mentioned in particular here, but and this is what happened to Janice after a year. In 3 months, she reversed her heart failure, her diabetes, her kidneys normalized, her fatty liver normalized, her blood pressure normalized. She got off all her medication. Her copay, like I said, was $20,000. She saved huge amounts of money, and she got her life back, and she lost 116 pounds. What is causing the dysfunctions that we see in the hallmarks? What are those things that we need to deal with and get rid of, and how do we address those? Well, a lot of it's driven by inflammation that leads to these problems, and it's basically our diet. For every 10% of your diet that's ultra-processed food, which is about 60% to 67% of our diet, your risk of death goes up by 14%. So you do the math. It's a lot. The number one killer in the world today is bad food and not enough good food. Kills 11 million people a year conservatively. I think it's a lot higher than that, more than smoking or anything else. It just dwarfs anything. Why did we see America, who's got the best healthcare system in the world, and is 4% of the population, have 16% of the COVID cases and deaths. Nobody's talking about that. It's the food. It's sugar. I hate to say it, I love sugar like anybody else, but we are not meant to eat 22 teaspoons a day, which is about the average for the average American. And I know I'm not having that much, so you must be having a little more. And we used to have 22 teaspoons a year as hunter-gatherers. Maybe we find a berry patch. And this leads to this phenomenon called diabesity, which is the spectrum of pre-diabetes to type 2 diabetes. This phenomenon now affects 93.2% of Americans. As toxins are a huge factor too. We're exposed to 80,000 new toxins since the Industrial Revolution, huge problem. Our microbiome has been so destroyed. If you look at indigenous cultures, our microbiome is very different. Mitochondria is a huge topic, and a lot of the ways that the aging and longevity switches work and food works is through mitochondria. What do the mitochondria do? They take the food you eat and the oxygen you breathe, and they combust it like an engine in your mitochondria through a whole assembly line and produce energy. And the waste is carbon dioxide you breathe off and water you pee out, and there's some waste, free radicals, and our bodies manage that. We deal with oxidative stress, but if we don't deal with that right, our mitochondria degrade, they get old, they get pooped out, and we lose energy, and we age fast. And a lot of the disease of aging, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, a lot of these are mitochondrial problems. Also, our sedentary lifestyle. I mean, I love these conferences and sitting, but I went and played tennis for an hour, and I feel much better by not sitting on my butt all day. And we know that now the lack of exercise, which probably maybe 8% of Americans get enough exercise, is also contributing in a huge way. Loneliness and isolation and disconnection. Why are we all here? Because we see our friends and our community. It makes us feel good. This whole phenomenon of sociogenomics, which is the power of our social interactions and our social networks to create health and well-being. And we may be using medication. I'm not against medication, but we have a lot of the tools already. And one of the things that we know is that calorie restriction is a powerful tool for extending life. It's the only thing that works in animal models over and over again to extend life by a third. So if you want to live to be, as a human, 120, that's the amount, right? If you're 80 is the average life expectancy, you extend it by a third, that's 120. So this is repeatable. Of course, nobody wants to be starving and eat a third less calories because you're going to be hangry all the time and not very much fun to be around, like me when I don't eat. And and this is an experiment they did with these mice. These are not mice, these are monkeys. And they basically put the monkey on the left on a calorie-restricted diet and the other monkey not. And the other monkey aged very fast, and his biological was worse, his labs are worse, he got arthritis and decrepit, and his skin was bad, and his hair was falling out. And, it's not fun. And what does calorie restriction do? It gives our bodies a chance to repair itself through this process called autophagy. Who's heard of autophagy? Oh, God, you guys are good. Okay. So autophagy is key to healthy aging, which is basically the idea that we have our own repair and recycling system. When we're starving and don't get enough food, we still need proteins. We still need to do stuff with our bodies. So what are we going to do? We're going to harvest old cells and parts, and we're going to break them down and digest them, and we're going to get the amino acids and all the pieces, and we're going to stick them back together to make new proteins and new parts so we can live. That's what autophagy is. It's basically self-cannibalism in the service of repair and regeneration. Hormesis essentially is the idea of it's a stress that doesn't kill you but makes you stronger. So our bodies are not meant to live in a thermoregulated 68-degree temperature and be in these controlled environments 24/7. We're meant to be stressed, and stress activates our longevity pathways. You can activate these pathways by what we talked about: time-restricted eating, intermittent fasting, longer fasts, fasting mimicking diets, ketogenic diets, all do the same thing. Exercise, really important. Moving your body. And there's two kinds of exercise. One is aerobic, and that's to increase something called your VO2 max, which is the maximum ability to use oxygen. And that's a measure of your mitochondrial function. So the higher your VO2 max, the fitter you are, the longer you live. And the way to do that is interval training, like I was running around a tennis court and I couldn't catch my breath. Basically, that's what you want to be doing. And then, obviously, strength training, and not like this, but, you want to be able to stress your muscles, stress your body in a way to build more muscle. So that's what hormesis is a great example. You use exercise to build your muscle, you lift weights, and your body is getting torn and damaged in a way, but your body responds by actually repairing and healing and making you stronger. Saunas are amazing. This show that by looking at Finnish sauna users, if you use it a couple of times a week, you reduce your risk of death by like 24%. If you did it like 4 or 5 times a week, it was like 45%. And that was like, the control was like 1 time a week. There's enough saunas in Finland that everybody can be in a sauna at the same time. So the control group was already doing 1 sauna a week. So saunas activate heat shock proteins. They activate, they activate your innate immune system. They increase your cardiovascular system health. They increase heart rate variability. They help you sweat out toxins. They make you feel good. It's a very powerful tool for longevity. Also, you might maybe know Wh Hoff. He's a good friend. He's a crazy man. Okay, so so this is a powerful thing. You know, when you're in a cold bath, this is basically a friend who had a very homemade, economically affordable cold plunge. It was basically a trough for animal water, and you pour it full of ice cubes and water, and you jump in. And that actually also activates all these longevity switches in the body.
I hope you found that information useful, and just remember that, like Dr. Hyman pointed out, there's some very simple things that you can do to extend your life that are available to everybody. You don't have to wait for science to catch up and make you immortal. But it's a good idea to take advantage of those things like exercise and nutrition to extend your life, to make sure that your body is still capable of benefiting from the scientific breakthroughs that are coming at us at a breakneck speed. Thanks for watching.